Built at Maranello, this Fiat is even rarer than its Ferrari namesake, and as desirable. Pros and cons: beautifully engineered, quirky, Ferrari link patchy parts availability, costly to run, good ones hard to find. £5,000 to £30,000. Mention that you've got a Dino to someone, and they'll COO over the fact that you're lucky enough to own a mid-engine baby Ferrari. That's always been the Fiat Dino's problem. Ever since it was unveiled more than 4 decades ago, it has always lived in the shadow of its more glamorous cousin. However, it's a double-edged sword because you can buy this enigmatic sports car with the same engine as Ferrari's Dino for a fraction of the price. Even better, you can choose from open or closed variants while also enjoying greater levels of rarity and, consequently, lower levels of familiarity. Perhaps the Fiat Dino is no consolation prize after all. History: the Fiat Dino came about thanks to a Formula 2 rule change in the mid-60s. Any car racing in the series would have to use an engine built at a rate of no less than 500 units in total. Ferrari felt it was important to be represented in the formula, but at that time, it didn't have the necessary factory capacity. There was no way it could expand dramatically to fit in with the new rules, so a tie-up with Fiat was arranged. Ferrari had a suitable engine to use as a starting point. Originally penned by Vittorio Jano in 1956, this highly stressed racing V6 was redesigned by Aurelio Lampredi to make it more suitable for road use. With an initial displacement of 1,596 cc, Lampredi settled on a production capacity of 1,987 cc, which was expanded to 2,418 cc in 1969. Design and production would be outsourced. It's no surprise that the Spider and Coupe look so different, as dropheads were styled and built by Pininfarina, while Bertone was responsible for the fixed heads. Although the Spider was unveiled first at the 1966 Turin Salon, Bertone had been working on its coupe design since 1963, with the car initially intended to replace Fiat's 2300S. The coupe debuted at the 1967 Geneva Motor Show. While the Spider is something of an acquired taste stylistically, the clean, understated lines of the coupe are universally admired. Not only is it less fussy, but the proportions are better too, thanks to a stretched wheelbase to accommodate full-sized seats in the rear. The drophead has a more limited 2+2 configuration instead, which in reality means space for 2 people plus a bit of extra luggage room. Dino production lasted 6 years, ending in 1972. By then, just 1557 Spiders had been built and 6,043 coupes, all left-hand drives. Of these, 1133 Spiders and 3,629 coupes featured the smaller engine. Over the years, many cars have been scrapped, but it doesn't happen anymore. They're too sought after for that, even if they're not especially valuable. Driving independent front suspension with double wishbones means the Dino is a fabulous car to drive, as long as it's in Vettel. Which engine you choose is also important in terms of the driving experience. Usability, running costs, and reliability are all affected, with the larger unit being the better one in all respects. The 2-litre unit is more free revving, however, while the car is less prone to understeer thanks to the lighter nose. This was an all-alloy unit, while the 2.4-litre block is cast iron. The earlier cars, developed in a hurry, made do with the live rear axle and half-elliptic leaf springs of the 2300 Coupe. The 2.4-litre cars are blessed with the independent setup of the Ford A130 and handle rather better as a result. Practical transportation rather than a pampered status symbol is how one UK road test summed up the Fiat Dino. Prices: people are starting to overlook the Fiat badge. The rarest of the bunch, it's the 2.4 Spider that's most valuable. It's also rarer than the Ferrari. Hard to find, you'll pay £22,000 to £36,000 for one, while a 2-litre edition is worth £20,000 to £32,000. Coupes are worth even less. A 2.4-litre edition is £9,000 £16,000 while 2 litres fetch £7,000 £13,000. The key thing to remember, though, is that while purchase costs are low, running costs are in Ferrari territory, something that buyers often overlook. This isn't a poor man's Ferrari, it's a rich man's Fiat. Improvements: the Dino was the first car ever to be fitted with electronic ignition. The Dinoplex system was once state-of-the-art but is now fragile and costly to fix. That's why most systems have been swapped for modern, upgraded electronics within the original Dinoplex housing, a cost-effective solution to the problem at £300. Engine upgrades are popular for both types of engines, with displacement increases possible on the 2-liter units. Bigger valves, upgraded camshafts, high-capacity oil pumps, and oil cooler kits may have been fitted, along with a lighter front wheel and an upgraded radiator, all things that make the car more usable. A stainless exhaust costs up to £1,800, according to Dino experts. What to look for whether you're looking at a 2-liter car or a 2.4-liter edition? The potential problems are much the same, although the latter unit tends to be more reliable. The most likely issue is with camshaft wear, especially if the engine hasn't been allowed to warm up properly before being revved to high heaven. Things are made worse by not keeping on top of the valve clearances, which need to be checked every 6,000 miles. It's a time-consuming, fiddly job that's frequently put off, which can prove expensive. There's the potential for a lobe to get knocked off the camshaft if clearances are way out. That's when things start getting really costly. Genuine Ferrari cams are around £1,200 each. There are 4, but Superformance does a set for £970, offering better mid-range torque. Listen out for worn timing chains, which rattle. Fresh ones cost around £850 if replaced by a specialist. On 2-liter engines, the chain itself is less problematic than the tensioner, which needs to be adjusted every 6,000 miles. Failure to do so can result in the chain jumping a cog, wrecking the engine in the process. Also, watch out for blue smoke when accelerating, which betrays worn cylinder bores. This is especially likely on a 2-liter power plant, but all Dino engines suffer from unreliable sender units for the oil pressure gauge. You should expect 50 psi at 3,000 revolutions per minute. But if that's not indicated, it could be a worn engine or faulty instrumentation. The distributor wears readily. They're not easy to revive, with a rebuild costing around £250 or £800. The Dino was the first car ever to use electronic ignition, but the Dinoplex setup isn't too durable and is probably replaced by now. The 2.4-liter engine potentially suffers from a few afflictions that don't affect the smaller unit. The first is broken exhaust valves, which are brittle sodium-filled items that can be quite fragile. Core plugs are also prone to weeping, and if left unchecked, this can lead to the coolant level dropping to the point where the engine overheats. The 2-liter car has a gearbox and differential, which are both weak. In the case of the former, the first thing to go will be the synchromesh on the second and third. Putting it right costs at least £1,750, as long as no gears are needed. Worn ball joints in the front suspension are common. They're sealed units that rapidly deteriorate once the rubber's split. Replacing them is easy, though. They're cheap too, at less than £25 each. Even a full suspension bush kit is £63, rear, and £126, front. A lot of the suspension parts are common to the 124, 125, and 2300, which means many bits are available from specialists. The Dino steering is by worm and roller. It's a sharper system than you might think. It's reliable too, although its damper sometimes loses an oil seal, leading to all the lubricant leaking out. Feel for steering kickback over bumps, betraying the fact that there's no oil in the system. Fitting a new seal is an easy task if it's needed. New worms for the steering box are now unavailable. The Dino is as badly affected by rot as most of its contemporaries, and replacement panels are unavailable and rare. The Ferrari factory-built Spider is the more vulnerable of the two. Fiberglass was routinely used on the production line if panels didn't fit properly, whereas the Bertone-built coupe was built to slightly more exacting standards. The two areas most likely to corrode are the A-posts and sills, both of which are essential to the car's strength. In the case of the former, open the doors and check the shutters along their forward edges. Also, take a look from the back of the inside of the wheel arch. This is where the metal starts to corrode when it gets battered by debris from the front wheels. If the outer sill looks tatty, the inner and intermediate panels are likely to be history, with repairs involved and costly. If the sills have been left to rot, the car structure could have been compromised as a result, so check that the doors close and fit properly. This is particularly important in the case of the Spider, which can also suffer from lacy fever as a result of water leaks into the cabin. All cars can suffer from rotten jacking points and outriggers, but inspecting these is easy as you only have to stick your head underneath. It's the same with the bottoms of the doors. While the trailing edge of the boot lid and leading edge of the bonnet need close inspection where the coupe is concerned, the Spider's boot lid and bonnet are aluminium. The rear valance also needs close inspection. Once rust takes hold, it eats its way into the structure, and repairs are not straightforward. The same is true of the front bulkhead, so lift the bonnet and make sure there's no corrosion or bodged repairs. Things aren't helped by rust often breaking out in the windscreen surround. When the glass was originally formed, the paint was frequently damaged in the process. The electrical system is generally reliable. Some parts are hard to find, but much is common to other contemporary Fiats. Most of the instrumentation and switchgear fall into that category, but not the exterior lighting. The rear lights are especially hard to find, and they're handed too. Look hard enough and you'll track down what you need. If you can put a Fiat 125 or 130 part number to something instead of its Dino one, you'll invariably pay a lot less. It's reckoned there are just 30 Spiders and 70 coupes here, so there are nothing like enough Dinos to go around, especially when it comes to really good ones. Restos rarely surface. German and Swiss cars are the best. Three-of-a-kind Ferrari Dino, arguably the closest thing to a Fiat Dino is its Ferrari namesake, but you'll need a lot more money to buy one of these than the Fiat. There were open, GTS, or closed, GT, variants, with both being very costly to buy. Nearly £100,000 for something good, although values are softening. The GTS is the rarer and more valuable of the two, while 2-litre cars, GT only, are unusual with just 150 built. Most have now been restored, some better than others. Fiat 130 Enzo Ferrari's daily driver was a 130, so consider that an endorsement of the greatest magnitude. It's no wonder he liked the 130 so much. This was the most luxurious and technically advanced Fiat ever, with a twin-cam V6, all-round independent suspension, and a disc brake on each corner. The saloons are all but extinct now. Coupés are more common, but you'll still have to search hard to find one, let alone a good one. Lancia Gamma, another large, quirky Italian classic. It's debatable whether or not the Gamma Rally rivals the Dino. There was no open-top derivative, but the sort of die-hard Italian car fan who would buy a Dino would consider only other Latin tins as an alternative. If you're tempted, you'll have to search for a decent one, as these cars are very fragile. Most have been thrown away because of wrecked engines and rotten bodywork. Verdict: it makes a big difference whether the Dino you buy is open or closed, because the Spider and Coupe are quite different beasts. The latter is more of a cruiser, with more compliant suspension, greater levels of refinement, and higher comfort levels. However, both cars allow you to delight in the sounds generated by the quad-camera V6 in the nose. Ultimately, though, your decision may be made based on what you can find. The biggest problem is finding a dinosaur that's been properly restored or genuinely cherished all its life. It's the usual story of restoration costs being way beyond what the car will be worth in the foreseeable future, which leads to bodges being all too common. However, there are good cars out there. You just have to be patient and be prepared to look at several before you buy. Once you've found a minter, look after it, and its value can only increase, but you're unlikely to make your fortune from it.